6 o'clock, we're going to go ahead and get started with our meeting. I appreciate everybody coming out tonight on a cold night. We've got some special guests here with us tonight. Our Sheriff, J.D. Hartman's here. He's going to make a presentation. And we're going to go ahead and get rolling. If you'll please join me in a moment of silence for our town and county. Amen. If you'll please stand with me and face the flag and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first item on our agenda tonight on the conflict of interest statement. I'm going to ask Lydia Lavelle, who is subbing in for Al Benshoff tonight, if she'll read that statement.
Yes, Mayor. Pursuant to North Carolina General Statutes and the Town of Mocksville Code of Ethics Policy, adopted November 9th, 2010, amended January 6th, 2019, and further endorsed on August 9th, 2022, I would ask each of you, before you adopt the agenda, if there is any actual, potential, or perceived conflicts of interest with respect to any matter on the proposed agenda which will come before the Town Board of Commissioners for consideration and/or decision at this meeting. If so, please speak up and let the board know at this time before the agenda is adopted.
Thank you. Thanks. So with none being said, we'll move right along to our adoption of the agenda. You'll notice our new business items end at E. We do need to add F tonight. Lynn passed out and sent an email out today regarding sidewalk connectivity project proposal and budget from JMT Engineering. We're going to discuss that tonight under item F of new business. Are there any other additions or deletions to tonight's agenda? If not, I just need a motion to approve. Second. Motion from Carl and a second from Justin. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. So next item on our agenda is our citizen comments. Is there anybody here tonight that would like to step up to the podium and speak about anything that might be on your mind? If not, then we'll close the citizen comment section and move right along to our, there's no public hearings tonight. We'll go to communications from boards, commissions, and agencies. Tonight, on the agenda, we had Merritt Kirkpatrick from marketing and content of Ward Master Media was going to be with us, but she is actually going to be coming to our February meeting. She is out sick and cannot be here tonight. So I'm going to ask Brandon Emery, President of Alliance Code Enforcement, to come and give us our quarterly report.
Mayor, Board, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. Just wanted to give you guys a quick overview of what we have done in this last quarter, touch on a few properties, and then give you some highlights and kind of some before and afters. So the first one, it's not worth I promise we had it up while I got it.
All right. I'm good.
Here we go. So we'll start 900 North Main Street. We have gotten everything completed on our end on the code enforcement side. Was able to get with Al everything that he needed from us, all the copies, all of the documents that he needed from us. We've got those turned in to him for him to be able to run with that. On the code enforcement side, there's been no change since our last update on this. I think still moving forward with the direction that was decided is the correct way. The next is the Spruce Street properties. So we've had quite a few complaints on these properties. We have issued the notice of violations, issued the notice of hearing. We've held the hearings. I do not believe that we had any attendance on that. We issued the finding of fact. Those have all been sent. The finding of fact has the order to abate, and it has an expiration date of January 16th, 2025. Once that expires, we'll be able to move forward with the with the ordinance for those structures, or ordering them to be abated. So ideally, we'll get that prepared, get it reviewed by Al in his office, and then ideally, it's something we can present in February for your review. December highlights, we had opened 16 new cases, 8 cases were abated. 10 hearings were scheduled for September 9th. Those are the addresses there. Hearings are also scheduled in September for several other properties. Violations by the numbers, what we're looking at kind of in December is about 20 minimum housing cases, about 32 junk pile, 21 junk vehicle, 23 overgrown lots, several zoning violations, and some animal control complaints. Currently, we've got about a 76% abatement rate. We've got several cases on hold, some unfounded, and then several new, and a majority of them are in some stage of progress from, them starting to work on them to being on the precipice of abatement. Just some before and after, some stuff that we've done. This is 148 Foster Street. You can see it before and obviously after. 112 Foster Street, they've done some significant work on that property. It was a minimum housing issue, and they've gone in and completely remodeled it. 684 Whitney Road, just stuff left out and not going to be picked up. We were able to get that cleaned up relatively quickly. 146 Holman Street, the truck's gone, so it's pretty obvious there. That's really just a kind of an overview of what we've done the last quarter. Again, our primary focus is to ensure that the community is educated on what the violations are, and give them the time needed to be able to bring it into compliance that's reasonable, and working with everyone that we can to try to help expedite that abatement. Do you guys have any questions?
Any questions for Brandon? Brandon, I think that your efforts are paying off. Thank you for seeing
I
the difference, so
appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. See y'all next time.
Okay, sounds good.
See you.
Next item on the agenda is a mid-year update from Sheriff J.D. Hartman.
If you will give me just a minute as we switch the computer here. Thank you, sir. Sure. Thank you. Large number of places, significant numbers are going to push it up.
Oh, yeah.
So, very minimal data that I showed you on paper. Everything I'm gonna show you this evening is preliminary data, as we're just into the new year. So we're looking at 2024, and I wanted to show you a calendar year for the city of Mocksville. So the second page you have on your paper, just for reference, so if we're talking and you're looking at the computer, you can kind of have a visual of what the zones look like in the city. And your third page is just a graphical reference to actual crime and whether it's up or down for the county. That's for the whole county, not just for the city. But we're gonna look right here at some data just for the city. This is the first time I've used this out live. We use it every day. This is how we determine what we're providing for you officer-wise and where in the city they're working, those types of things. So I know I've showed you data in the past, but this is a little more in-depth, looking at a whole calendar year. If you want me to be quiet, just tell me, because I can talk about this stuff all night, okay? First thing we're going to look at is CAD data, which is the total call volume, if everything works right, for the city for the entire calendar year. So that is not what I needed. So let me fix that for a minute. Why did it do that? Just give me 1 second. We'll fix it. I apologize. Get used to y'all's mouse. So the first thing you're looking at is we had 7,366 CAD events inside the city limits. Out of those 7,300 and some events, we actually opened 960 cases or took a full-blown criminal report on 960 of those. Answering those calls, there were 10,935 sheriff's units dispatched over the course of 1 year inside the city limits. So that might mean 3 units on one call, or that might mean I worked in the city 5 days and it's counting all those calls. But there were 10,935 individual units dispatched. So let's look at some of those charts. So the chart to your left is based on the legend, which is based on NIBR's reporting, which is what's required by the federal government for us. So it groups things into a category. The chart on the right actually shows you the traffics or the incidents themselves. So we can make that smaller if you want to look. So the highest incident you had in the city was traffic stops. Make it a little smaller. Then we served papers were your second highest. Then alarm calls at your businesses were the third highest. Then suspicious activities, persons, vehicles, etc. was your fourth. And then follow-up to criminal investigations or follow-up to calls was your fifth highest activity. So then I can look at what officer worked the most, how many calls they answered that was recorded. I can see how those calls to the right were completed, just an assignment complete or the officer handled or report taken or false alarm or no act, no report or an arrest, etc. So I've showed you this, I've shown you this in the past, but this falls into how we're assigning calls and when, or cars and when to the city. So you can look at this graphically by time of day. So for the whole year, you're looking at your busiest time of day is 9 o'clock in the morning over the period of a year's activities. Your busiest day is Tuesday and Wednesday, with a Monday for y'all. It changes a little bit when you do the whole county. It's usually Thursday, not the Monday, that goes with Tuesday and Wednesday. For some day, or for some reason, excuse me, we've talked about this in the past also, countywide doesn't change for the past 10 years. It always seems to be a Tuesday and a Wednesday that are the busiest days, which surprises a lot of people. But I can look at that graphically in this program and see it combines hour and day. So 10 o'clock on a Thursday is actually, over a year time, your busiest hour and day of week. So I assign more folks to the city in that time frame and in that block, and less to the city at say 3 o'clock in the morning, where in a whole year we only answered 8 calls on Thursday. Okay. Then I can look at it this way. This shows me my repeat locations where we've had the most calls. We'll get a little closer so you can really see. So that 140 South Main Street is at the courthouse. Keep in mind that probation is at the courthouse, so if we're dealing or arresting probationers, the magistrate's office is at the courthouse, so the magistrate is constantly calling us to take reports and talk to people that come to the magistrate's office. That falls inside the city, so it counts for y'all. Out in the city, away from the courthouse, as you can see, our number one response time or response location is Cooper Creek Drive. We all know what's on Cooper Creek Drive. And then you can see that address as you go down. These are repeat addresses. So for example, Cooper Creek Drive, in 1 year, we answered 224 calls there. And I can go down, we can look at it by common name. Keep in mind that this is CAD data we're looking at. This is not my data. It's coming from the CAD system. So if the CAD system has a common name for a location, it'll pull it. The reason you see that NA is that large, because if you think about it, all the residences in the city, the CAD doesn't have a common name for them. It's usually a store, as you can see, or a school, or something like that. So again, Walmart, Sheetz is right up there. Excuse me. The truck stop, you can see where your busiest locations are, where we're answering the most calls in your city. To the right is just when an address is listed, it's what city is listed. So you'll see Winston-Salem, Lexington, some other cities, because somebody involved in that call listed that city, and that's in the CAD system. But as you can see, the majority of them, 99% of them, list the city of Mocksville. So, and we'll move on down. Again, focus here to the left, if you would. That's the zones, sheriff's office zones that are inside the city limits. So again, that helps us determine where we're answering calls. Excuse me. 6D, if you look at the second page I gave you and pay attention, that's your Walmart and fast food area along 601. That corridor up through there is 6D. So you obviously can tell that's where we answer the most calls at. That's where your hotels are, the majority of them, etc. So, by a long shot, that's where the majority of our cars spend their time in the city, just because that's where you're the busiest at, okay? The next one over is just a larger zone, because we have the whole county divided into 6 zones, and then sub-beats are the smaller, like the 6D Mock, okay? And we can look at it on a map, so you can actually see what it looks like for your city. I can disable the clustering so you can really see where the calls are in the city. As you can see, we answer calls across the spectrum. I mean, you have some areas that are busy, but we actually answer calls across your entire city, okay? And then I can actually look at every call that happens in the city in this program while I'm studying that, or the Chief Deputy Brian, who's with me tonight, is looking at that, okay? So that's your CAD data. I'll stop before I go to the next one. If there's any questions about the CAD data. If not, we'll go on. So let's look at your RMS data, which is your actual crime data. So this way shows crime, so it's going to show you a little bit of a different data than the CAD data, okay? This is actual reports. So counting it this way, we took 1,074 reports, which means we opened 1,074 cases, but there were only 1,068 crimes listed for those reports. So some of those reports could be like a found property report, so it's not a crime. There were 2,186 people that we dealt with involved in these reports, and 294 vehicles involved in these reports. Again, to the left is your NIBRS groupings, so you can see what your highest groupings are. As you can see, NA are not available that's because there are several crimes that do not have a NIBRS or don't register as NIBRS, and those come out as other. You'll see that throughout the presentation, or NA, because they're not NIBRS reportable, okay? But when you want to narrow that down, you can move over here. We can narrow it down, and let's look at your top ones. So again, NA, there were 271 listed as NA, so those are crimes, again, committed that are not listable when you report things to the federal government. It could be, for example, your ordinance violations that are criminal, that are misdemeanors. Those are not reportable under NIBRS to the federal government, okay? But your number one crime is larceny, in general speaking terms. Simple, people getting in fights. And you can see there going down your top 5 crimes, etc. Weapons involved. 885 of those reports didn't have any listed weapons. I can look and see the people listed, what their ties were to the report, from the witness to the victim to the offender, suspect, etc. I can look and see how those cases were closed, what types of those 264 vehicles are involved in the cases. And again, we can look at when crime is actually occurring. So we take the most actual crime reports at 3 o'clock in the afternoon for some reason over the last year. Tuesdays seem to be your highest crime day. And you look at it across the board at, as we said, Tuesday at 3 o'clock. But this whole little group between 3 and 4 o'clock seems to be your highest time that we're actually taking crime reports. So,
JD, why do you think that would be? Why would a Tuesday? Why would-
you know, I get asked that a lot. My answer is not to be flippant, but there is no rhyme or reason to when this happens. You know, in our world, we talk about when there's a full moon, but when you look at it statistically, that is a myth. But you'll never convince our patrol officers that more things don't happen when there's a full moon. So I think if you could find a person that can answer that and legitimately answer it, then they would be famous, because there's just no real rhyme or reason to it. You know, people think the weekend is when you're the busiest, but it's actually not true. So, again, where crime's occurring, I've already made that one a little smaller to show you. Obviously, Walmart, shoplifting, they run you ragged. That's obvious there. Yackenville Road, that corridor, that same corridor you saw where we answered the most calls, is also where the most crime seems to occur, okay? And then you have several schools in the county. The SROs have some calls at those schools, okay? Again, it's just showing you by address and name where things are occurring. Again, what zone they're occurring in, or what beat they're occurring in. As we've already talked about, that corridor, 601 corridor, which is the 6D Mott, is where the majority of things are occurring. Again, by common place name, by location type. So we'll make that smaller. You'll see the NA, because officers, this is another tool we use to check officers. Somebody failed to fill out or check the block in their reports, and the supervisor didn't catch it 288 times, basically, because they didn't list where the general location was. But as you can see, the number one place we actually take reports with crimes involved is in private residences. Then the highway, which equates to, you have a large number of traffic stops in the city. So that would make sense that highway is very high, okay? Again, I can see the reports. Again, we can look at a map and see where your crimes are actually occurring. So you can see that narrows it down a little bit, as opposed to where we were answering calls that don't quite cover the city like the calls do. Typically it's along roadways or where you have storefronts, or so you can see that. I can scroll in and look at an area individually. So if you have a number like this 6 in Rich Park, that means there's actually 6 calls there, or 6 different crimes that occurred there, 6 different reports taken, okay? So I'll stop if you have any questions about crime or crime activity in the city before we look at the next thing. No? Okay.
I did see one thing, counterfeit up there. Or do we have an issue at all with counterfeit?
We have a, countywide we do. I won't say it's a huge issue, but there's always somebody trying to pass counterfeit money. It just seems to be, typically it's a $20 bill, or sometimes it's $100 bills. It runs in cycles. Mm-hmm. You'll go for a while and not have one, and then all of a sudden you'll have 5 or 6 stores that call and report something. Counterfeiting can also be checks or other valuable property or forgot the word, I'm sorry, but checks or any kind of document that's forged can be a counterfeit type thing.
Okay.
So let's look at your, I won't bother to show you all this. I think I will show you this one for just a second. This is one of the metrics that's required by our contract, and I talk about that some in the data that I gave you. But this shows me just in the city, our response time. It includes that moment of time where communications is handling the call before it gets to us. So even from the time they pick the phone up and talk on the telephone, we're responding to majority of your calls in 7 minutes and 15 minutes. That's our average, or 7 minutes and 15 seconds, excuse me. But we look at that here also this way. Excuse me again. So you can see that call volume in 30 seconds, 1 minute, 1 minute, 30 seconds, what our response times are. And how many calls we responded to in that time frame. So I look at that and see how it changes over time to continue to meet that metric that's required by the contract, okay? I can look in a zone. As you can see, 5E is where it takes us the longest. 6A. 6A is the 1 block area around the courthouse. It probably is because I have deputies assigned to the courthouse the majority of the time, so they're pretty fast getting to that little 1 block area. But that's the smallest zone in the county, is just that 1 block around the courthouse. It was actually designed before I had a contract with, when the sheriff's office was there, because when we were actually in the courthouse, we had a lot of activity there. The chief deputy and I were looking at it today. Just walk-in people at the office on Farmington Road was something like 1,600 calls this past year, where just people walked in to file a report. So that all used to happen at your courthouse. It doesn't happen now. But I also can look and see what units and who's taking the longest to respond, so I can address that if I've assigned somebody to the city and they're not responding in a timely manner. I can see that. This, to me and Brian, it shows us that we're pretty norm in our assignments. If you look, it takes longer to respond at night when there's less calls, but there's also, usually we've assigned less people, as you can see that. Then you can see as it ramps up during the hours, daytime hours, when we talked about we were the busiest, we're responding faster to more calls, which is what you want to see. You know, that we're still maintaining that or getting faster in our response time, even though we're getting busier. Okay. And then again, I can look at what our average response times are, day of week, by hour, those type things, and all the calls that do. Now, I filtered this particular thing, so anything that takes us less than 10 seconds, it doesn't count. The reason I do that is, as I've explained, or if you've ever seen the form I send quarterly or monthly to Lynn or Ken prior to Lynn, it details out that we take certain calls out, for example, a traffic stop, because that really plays to my favor or to the sheriff's office favor, because an officer initiates that. So it's a 0 response time or 1 second response time. You saw how many traffic stops we did inside the city. So that would really throw my response times. I could really look good if I didn't do that. But I try to be fair and honest about what we're doing and responding. So we start at 10 seconds, So those types of calls that take 0 or very little, few seconds to respond to, doesn't count against y'all, okay? The last thing I want to show you, because I don't want to take your whole night, is what we call the ComStat. I'll draw your attention really to the last 4 columns. So this looks at your crime categories, etc., and it compares the selected period, which is 2024, to the previous period, which would have been 2023. It shows you the actual change, and then it shows you the percentage of change. This computer is not showing me a full screen and I can't move it over, so you'll just have to, can you see that on y'all's? You can still see the percentage on your last column to the right? Okay, that's that 13% is your grand total of what I showed you earlier. That's actually a reduction over the year for actual crime, but this allows me to look and see what types of crimes are going up. As you can see, drug crimes went up, the disorderly conduct, which if you could go back and remember what we looked at under crimes, disorderly conducts were high. They were in your second or third level, fight type calls, etc. So that went up. Now, you'll see a large percentage number, but then you also go back and look at some of these things, like disorderly conduct was 200% increase, but if you're looking, it actually was like 24 calls was all it was over a whole year. Okay. So just because you have a large percentage increase doesn't necessarily mean you're being overrun. You have to look at both, okay? But I also can look at it by the zone, the beat for the city. So that again helps me know where to move cars, when to move cars. We're looking at it from a whole calendar year, just for your reference tonight, but I can look at it weekly, daily, monthly, so that helps us decide where to move. I can see those trends in the city as things are changing almost instantly, and we can respond to that, okay? So that's all I have. Well, I have a whole lot more. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer it, but I don't want to be here again all night with you. If you have any questions, feel free.
Any questions for JD from the board? JD, I think we're all in consensus that we're moving in a good direction with law enforcement. And,
Thank you, sir.
I think that from what we've seen, crime's down. If you look at the overall picture, 13%, which is good. So,
Yes, sir.
so thank you for what you guys do. Brian, thank you for y'all coming tonight and making this presentation.
Well, thank you for being great partners. I don't think we could do that any better, the partnership, so.
It's been a good collaboration between us all.
Yes, sir.
So, good deal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Y'all have a great day and be safe out there in the new year. Okay, moving on with our agenda. Next item is our consent agenda, where we'll need to approve the minutes and financials from our prior meetings.
So moved.
Motion from Justin and a second from Jenny. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. We'll move on to old business. First item, consider amendment to Chapter 5, Article 2, Section 523. Lynn, will you make that presentation?
Yes, Mayor, board members. The first reading for this amendment of this ordinance was December the 3rd. The ordinance takes effect February the 1st of 25. The builder will need to get a permit to burn construction waste or yard waste, clearing the property inside town limits. This is not unusual for towns that are involved with this development for these types of burn bans. This is the second reading, and then it'll be effective February 1st.
Any questions for Lynn on this amendment? Nope. Not, we just need a motion to adopt. I have a motion from Carl and a second from Justin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Moving on to the first item in new business, Raina, consider budget amendment number 1, enterprise fund.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. So budget amendment number 1 is gonna be for the Breakbridge Force Main and the Eaton Road 6-inch water line. We budgeted in prior years and the funds went back to fund balance. We didn't budget it this year, so therefore we need a budget amendment for that.
Okay.
Any question?
Any questions for Raina on this? We just need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion from Rob,
Second.
second from Justin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. And second, Raina, consider budget amendment number 2 from the general fund.
Okay, so this is the LGE retirement match for the former town manager. This was not a budgeted amount and that's why, in this current year, and that's why we need the budget amendment.
Any questions on this item?
As much as we don't like it.
That's right.
Move that we approve.
Okay, motion from Rob, second from Carl. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you, Raina.
Thank you.
Item number C, consider amendment to Mocksville Town Ordinance, Chapter 2, Article 5, no through truck locations, Lynn.
Yeah, on page 70, we've had ongoing issues with the heavy trucks, mostly car carriers, accessing West Maple Avenue to deliver cars to the lot on Sanford Avenue. The problem has not gone away, even after several conversations with the car lot owner. To date, street signs and a storm drain and a fire hydrant has been damaged. Locusts will be posted past the car, so they'll still get deliveries. So that's why we're changing the ordinance. And if I'm not mistaken, probably over a month ago, Brian placed some signs down there, no trucks.
Okay. So now if they do it anyway, because there's an
They're gonna be a
ordinance,
violation.
it'll be a violation. So any questions on this? Motion approved. Got a motion from Carl and a second from Jenny. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? That passes. Item number D, consider the agreement with JMT Engineering Planning for Phase 2, conceptual design and construction management.
On page 73, at the July 2nd meeting, the board approved Phase 1, which was existing conditions review, using the Bateman Civil Survey, which was $10,500 with, through JMT Engineering. This is the service agreement for Phase 2, for the design, the bidding and construction management. It'll take approximately 4 months, and the estimated project fees, design and bid administration, which is $7,000, and construction management and permitting was $9,500 plus the standard billing rates. And all this was budgeted in Community Development's Capital Project Fund. The Phase 2 was executed on 12/6, but I just found it necessary to put it back on the agenda so the board would be transparent in and it being in the minutes with your approval.
Any questions for Lynn on Phase 2?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion from Rob,
Second.
a second from Jenny. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you, Lynn. And finally, Lynn, consider Mocksville Planning Board applicant for board appointment for a 3-year term.
Yes, page 82 is consider a Mocksville Planning new applicant. One second. Still, a new applicant to appoint Scott Geyer for the planning board, and then we'll still have 1 seat that needs filling if you approve him tonight.
So just to let you know, Scott Geyer is the one that's talked to us about, has that stop arm company that makes the stop arms for school buses. And he lives in the yellow house on North Main Street, near Justin.
Commissioner Drone recommended his application. Yes.
Motion to, I'm sorry. I'll make a motion to
Okay,
approve.
a motion from Justin, a second from Carl. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And You know, this came as a recommendation from Justin. You guys, we need one more planning board member if you can think of anybody in the community.
Yes.
Think about it. So that's an important spot to fill. And finally, item number F, the sidewalk discussion. Lynn, do you want to open us up to that discussion, please?
The email I sent out to you today, this proposal was supposed to be sent to us the last week of December. So therefore, I've had just as much time as y'all have to look over it. Y'all had mentioned in the summer about the sidewalks. And so this is the proposal, part 1 and part 2. And this is just the design and the construction management. It has nothing to do with construction. And then we're keeping part 2, which is Duke Street. We're keeping that separate because that construction could be part of the grant, which is the CRP grant, the carbon reduction plan. That grant was $572,000, and the town was gonna be a match for $143,000. That was approved in July as well, that grant. So Duke Street, but we still have to pay for that design because that grant won't pay for nothing but construction. And it could be most likely that construction could be more than $572,000. We won't know until we send it out for bid, the same way with this part one. We won't know how much the sidewalks are gonna actually cost until you send it out for bid.
But this price here will include the right-of-way and
Yes.
the design and utilities.
Yes, and then they will come to a meeting and they'll have a map, they'll have their design, and, that'll get us to step 2.
So tonight, we're just discussing this, we're not to take action? Is that?
You can take action. You can just ask, I'll try to
Well, I was
answer
just gonna
questions.
Comment that if we did take action, it will help to move the process. We know that we have some potential funding out there from earlier funding from the state legislature that can be used potentially for these projects, so we would, to keep this project moving forward,
That's correct.
they want to do that. I know we have a little more time than we
In your
originally thought.
email, there was 4 pots of money, and Powell bill would be first. And if I'm not mistaken, that was addressed to, back in the summer, that we would start with Powell bill funds. Because the state grant has its own projects, and we would have to wait to see how much money of that we had left, which could go towards some of the construction.
Right.
Because we have now until June of 2026 to spend that money. We have longer.
Right, and we do feel like that money will hold, like you said, if they'll
Then the-
pass the Powell bill money.
Yes.
Help us get the projects.
Then the third part of money would be the grant.
Maybe an opportunity that we don't get any time in the next, for a while, to be able to get a project of this scope underway.
And then the fourth pot of money would be the fund balance. I will be working on the grant application next week because it will go on the DOT's board in February. And they said that I had a meeting with them today, and we're meeting once a month. They're on a time scale. We have until May of 26 to start this construction. Well, today when I met with them, I was like, well, man, that's a long time. Well, guess what? We're behind. So if you table this, and I'm not recommending it, I'm not recommending you table it, it's up to the board. If you table this, it throws us a month behind. Because the sooner the engineers can get started on the design, that'll help them give the DOT, all the reports. And it works together.
Lynn, you mentioned to me that you had talked to Chuck Willis about this.
Yes, I was concerned about the cost myself, when it came in. I'm like, oh my goodness. But actually, it's not extreme. I sent it to Chuck to just look over engineering for the market, and he said it was good.
But that's all 3 sidewalks.
Catches Maroney, that's
That's all.
everything. That catches everything we talked
That's
about.
the design of everything that you wanted.
It's likely that we won't do all 3 of them,
At least we would have Maroney
but we
in
would
there
have
and
the
all.
engineering done.
That's correct, and maybe you could take segment 1, 2, and 3 and do it.
Well, while the costs are in there now, if we locked it in, at least we would know where we stood on those additional projects rather than take it apart right now. And, only do part of, at least from the standpoint of, project.
You have to
budget- as
start
far as
somewhere.
Correct, from budget estimate, whether we do the whole scope of those, all 3 projects, but we'll know better when we have some numbers. I'm gonna take a shot here and make a motion to approve as it's been presented. See if we can get a second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Carl and a second from Justin and Johnny. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So that does pass unanimously, so you can move forward with that.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all the new business that we have. Moving on to communications from town and staff. Tonight, Al Benchoff is out of town, but Lydia Lavelle is with us. Lydia, did you have anything you want to contribute?
Just briefly wanted to point out, I know there's a memo we included about SB 382. Not sure if you all have talked about that very much, but it's a law that was passed by the legislature. It was part of an omnibus bill, but it was kind of at the end of it, tacked on at the end of it, but it has a lot of implication for planning in counties and towns and cities across North Carolina. And the major upshot of it is, and I know Al included the memo, so if you want to follow up afterward with what I'm saying, the main upshot of it is for councils that it used to be that councils, local governments had the authority to downzone properties. And now they no longer have that authority. And so Al's words to me when he told me to kind of talk briefly about this with you was to be sure that council understands, be really sure if you want to upzone, because if you do upzone some property, you won't be able to downzone it again under the current law. Now, I will say the law has some other major kind of implications for it. For example, around uses, and also around what's called nonconformities. And there are a lot of towns and cities across the state that are really concerned about some of the implications of this law. And so another thing that the league has been telling managers and council members to do, staff members to do, is to kind of keep track of any stories about how the law might be affecting something that you want to do or something that you've done, so that the league can collect these stories and perhaps meet with the legislators this year in the hopes that they might make some modifications to the law over the course of the next year.
So in a property that's been upzoned from residential to commercial or industrial, that means we can't take it back the other way?
You can't make it less dense, and this is like predominantly residential, but that's another ambiguity is what about mixed use, for example? But the takeaway really across the state has been, and another thing is it's retroactive. So I'm not sure what you've done in the last 180 years. I think Al said your planning folks come from the county predominantly, is the county. So, and I'm sure they're aware of this law because it's been all the rage and all the buzz with the planners and with the managers and so forth. But anything that's been done within the last 180 days has to be undone. And so I think most planning staffs are taking a real kind of conservative look at what's coming up over the next several months as this kind of moves forward. And again, this is actions taken by local governments. I mean, private property owners can do what they want with their property, but it's local government used to be able to do this, and now they no longer have this authority.
Okay. Any questions for Lydia? Thank you, Lydia. Anything else? Okay, moving on to our interim town manager, Lynn. By the way, Ken, this is our first meeting without Ken since Ken has left. Lynn is our new interim town manager. Thank you, Lynn, for agreeing to do that. And Emily is our clerk. So thank you for being there. But I'm glad you're in that spot. The last time you were in that spot, we were at a round table. It's a different world. So did you have anything to add tonight?
Yes, I wanted to thank the departments that endure this cold weather and wind. And I do want to mention, Public Works that had a major water leak today. And it was windy and cold, and I just want to say thank you. That's all I have.
Jenny, you got
I
anything?
just wanted to thank Miss Lynn and Miss Emily for their hard work, and thank all the departments for all y'all's hard work. And I also want to thank the fire department. I did a ride along on last Monday, and it was very amazing experience. Really, I learned a lot. It was kind of.
You'll be a volunteer fireman.
I was getting ready to say.
It makes you want to the adrenaline, but when you go in there, it's a different sight.
Great job, ladies, stepping up, taking us forward. I also wanted to remind just the community in general, we do have a fundraiser coming up for Smart Start, February the 21st. Tickets are still available. Great cause to raise money for our literacy programs for our children. It will be at Bermuda Run on February the 21st.
Thank you.
Thank you to the interim manager and clerk, official clerk, and to the team. I know, and our winter's early. It's only January 7th. We've already got our snow
So it's
events, and
coming.
cold and everything, so thank you all for all you do.
That's good. Johnny?
I'd like to thank the whole entire staff of the town, especially the workers out in the cold. If you've never been out there, you do not know what to do. But those guys today started out early in this temperature, and they worked together as a team. So I want to say thank you, Brian.
And I'll just close with mentioning this. I went to a meeting today. It was called the Local Emergency Preparedness Committee. And it's all the folks in our county that have to do with emergency preparedness. And CJ Dwiggins, who's the captain of our fire department, spoke at that meeting about his team that went out to Asheville during the Hurricane Helene. And several other folks got up and spoke. CJ represented the town of Mocksville very well and did a great job. And I don't know if you knew this, but on John Crotts Road, Bethel Church Road out there, there is a facility out there that FEMA used to stage like 300 some ambulances and all these emergency vehicles. That comes out of our county. That we were the staging ground for so much that went on in Asheville. And I didn't realize all that went through there until there was a lady that spoke today at that meeting. So Davie County, there's going to be an article coming out about that meeting today and all that came out in that meeting. But we should be very proud of what we've got going on in our county and our town. So I was very pleased. That's all I've got. We do have I need a motion to go into closed session to discuss our hiring of our town manager.
And move that we we enter closed session pursuant to NCGS 143-318.11 to preserve attorney-client privilege and discuss the acquisition of real property and/or personnel.
Second. So a motion from Rob and a second from Carl. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. The motion to go out of closed session.
moved.
Motion from Rob.
Second.
Second from Jenny. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Move it to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion from Rob and a second from Carl to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.